40, 50 people looking at you. I mean, is there an accepted way you're supposed to look?
We expected him to be very somber, and he, in fact, was lighthearted, was bantering with his guards, smiling at people outside through the gas chamber glass.
He said, "I love you." That's why I think he said. I mouthed that I loved him. I said, "I love you." And they brought him in, sat him down, very, very organized, and they strapped him in. Strapped him in, exited. And at that point, it became almost real silent in there. Also, you could hear the mechanical mechanisms. Clang, ching.
Για όσους άνοιξαν τώρα την τηλεόρασή τους, παρακολουθούμε μια εκτέλεση όπως την περιγράφουν όσοι ήταν παρόντες. Σύμφωνα με την Αμερικανική νομοθεσία, την εκτέλεση έχουν δικαίωμα να παρακολουθήσουν συγγενείς του μελοθάνατου αλλά και των θυμάτων του. Σερίφιδες, δημοσιογράφοι και VIP, προσωπικότητες δηλαδή. Αλλά μια τελευταία προσφυγή του καταδικασμένου παγώνει την εκτέλεση. Θα στερηθούν άραγε το θέαμα οι προσωπικότητες και την αποκλειστικότητα οι δημοσιογράφοι. Η συνέχεια και το τέλος αμέσως μετά από ένα μικρό διάλειμμα.
1957. Ο εθνικός μας αερομεταφορέας γίνεται πραγματικότητα. Η Ολυμπιακή αεροπορία ξεκινά ένα μεγάλο ταξίδι για το μέλλον της Ελλάδας. Μακρινές πόλεις, απομονωμένα νησιά γίνονται κέντρα της χώρας και η χώρα μας κέντρο του κόσμου.
There's no stopping it. Of course, I didn't know at what stage. I could just hear these strange... The gas chamber is, I think, exactly what one should imagine it to be, which is half modern law and half middle-age contraption. These things are not new stainless steel. This is an old machine that has been operating since 1941 in California, unchanged. And so it looks like that and it sounds like that and it's clunky and it's clanky and you hear hissing sounds of water and you hear all manner of things. And each one chokes you up a little bit. I mean, each one you wonder, is this the one? Is this the one?
You know, there he was sitting there on display, and for all these people, there were 50-some people staring at him. He was about to be killed. He couldn't move, and nothing was happening. And he didn't. And he sort of got. I don't know. It sounds strange to say, but it looked to me like he got embarrassed by the whole thing. Like something was wrong. He didn't know what to do, and he remember he looked back over his shoulder at least one time to us, and kind of shrugging, like saying, "What's going on? I don't know what's going on."
Harris himself looked around as if to say, what is happening? And he was mouthing something that I couldn't quite see.
He's looking under his legs where the actual gas is supposed to come from and saying, what's going on? I saw him say, pull it, like a toilet. Pull it.
And he sat there for, good grief, it seemed like an awful long time. And he sat there and sat there.
And then time just kept going, and for quite a while he was sitting there. And Dan Lundgren was saying, this is just taking too long.
Still nothing. The reporters are beginning to get sort of journalistically curious. What time is it? You know, you see them and they write things down.
You know, I could see that man sitting in that gas chamber, and I couldn't get to him right away, and he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what was happening. You know, he didn't know why he was still alive.
And it seemed like time was standing still and ticking at a millisecond with each tick rather than a second. And then there was this deafening ringing of a bell.
A phone rang. You could hear very distinctly. You could hear the ringing of a phone. And somebody in the witness group, I think it came from the middle of the group, said, "Oh God," or "Oh my God," something like that.
I don't know if they were saying it because they were hopeful that it was a reprieve, or if it was clemency, or if they were sorry that it was ringing. I don't know.
I remember saying, "Oh my God, no! This, you know, no."
and they came in and said he got another stay.
Oh, we're getting an incredible word right now. It is not an execution. There is another stay.
A stay. I knew it. I knew it. This couldn't be happening. It's not going to happen. They're not going to kill him. We won. Bobby's going to live. Tomorrow we'll be laughing about this. All those things. And at the same time, such an incredible release of emotion.
I started crying. And I couldn't believe it. I was numb. I thought, this isn't happening. This can't possibly be happening. It's like a movie.
People were there. They were ready for it to happen. They were ready to have their senses assaulted. They were ready to have this book closed. They were ready to have the words on the page say, the end. But it was just like you're getting ready and you turn the page and there's another chapter that nobody really knew anything about. Another chapter that was written after the book had ended.
Very close, very close. He would not know how close he came. Just a matter of a split second, perhaps.
We were disappointed. We didn't necessarily want to see a man die, but that was the story that we had been set there to cover, and covering stories is what journalists do. So we were disappointed that we were going to be robbed of covering the story, because we were told earlier, someone had inquired whether or not, if the execution was not conducted at this time, whether we would be the ones to come back and cover it next time. And we were told no, there would be a new lottery, and the odds were very high that we would not be selected again. It would be a new set of reporters there to cover it.
There were people trying to stop it. They called appellate judges. They called this judge. They called that judge. And finally, the Supreme Court of the United States of America took their phones off the hook because of the constant bombardment of telephone calls once the decision had been made to execute this man.
California Attorney General Dan Lundgren read the majority opinion.
There is no good reason for this abusive delay, which has been compounded by last-minute attempts to manipulate the judicial system.
It was very clear to me that it was critical to the governor that this take place. It was expedient that this execution happen and that Robert Alton Harris die. Not so much because of what he did, as much as it was that this was a very symbolic thing for the administration. This was a very symbolic political statement.
I told him, Robert, I said, we are not going to stand down. We're not going to move you back to death row. We are going to stay right here where we're at. I told him the attorneys are still going to try to lift a stay of execution, so everything is going to remain the same. Do you understand that? And he says, okay, Warden. So then I left.
That's when he began to show the strain of being real tired, just exhausted. He began to look real tired, and the last 2 hours he spent a lot of time sitting on that rolled-up mattress. The thing that really stands out in my mind in that last 2 hours, he got cold, and he told them he was cold, and they reached a blanket through the little hole in the bars to him, and I can remember him sitting there and pulling that blanket over his shoulder and sitting on that roll with his head down like that. And that I don't think that if I live to be 100 years old, that picture will never fade away. I can see him sitting with that blanket over his shoulder and his head down.
Every minute that passed, I thought we were safer, closer to home, ready to end this, you know. I don't know if I picked a deadline at 6 in the morning, we'll all be able to go home and look, at this behind us, or 12 o'clock or something like that. I just knew that every time the clock moved, we were further from the crisis.
I was down in Dan's office, Warden Vasquez's office, which had been sort of turned into what I called the war room. The tables had been rearranged, and the high-ranking people in the corrections were there. Gomez was there, Dan was there, and we were all standing around, and then the fax machine came on, and things sort of stopped, and the fax said there shall be no further stays.
There couldn't be, because it's not, nowhere in our constitutional system does it provide for the Supreme Court to say you can't appeal no matter what the issue. There's always the possibility. They can deny it, but they can't say there will never be another one. And I remember thinking, they can't have done that.
Pretty final order. So with that, we started the process of preparing for the second execution. Everything started just moving very quickly, very rapidly. And I walked over to the gas chamber, and I went to the death watch cell, and I told Harris that his stay had been lifted and that the execution would proceed.
Oh, man, I mean, all hell broke loose, basically. And we were rushed over to the waiting area, jumped in the buses. I mean, literally flew over there. I could have run. I don't know why they made us get in the buses.
They searched our shoes, our belt, and I was still, in fact, trying to get one shoe on my foot as I walked across the road in line to the gas chamber.
They came and got us and said, okay, it's on again, and we were all like, yes.
They rushed us right down to the waiting room. We knew exactly what to do then. We knew how to line up. We went right in, and they did not waste any time. This was about 5 to 6 we went in.
This one was not going to be stopped. I mean, for them to go through the process again, they were not, the legal system, the state would not permit itself to be embarrassed twice. Once was enough. And we walked out. I remember Randy saying, don't walk so fast, whispering to me, don't walk so fast, as if slowing down your pace could hold back the dark.
They seemed like they just wanted to make sure that that phone couldn't ring again. They were just trying to do everything so hurriedly. And they grabbed me, and just as I started out the door, he said, I'll see you in the morning, man. And, of course, we both knew what that meant. He was talking about the dawning not of the next sunshine, the next sunrise, but the morning when we were in heaven together. That's what he was talking about.
As we're pushed in, as the last of us, which is us, the family, are pushed in, the prison spokesman, Vernell Crittenden, who was standing right by the chamber door, who was to be sort of the last person sweeping us in, went like this to the guards behind. It was sort of a football. Our team has just scored. We won. We got it. It's moving. The process is at work.
And this time, I was just shocked to see Robert's face, because he looked to me like he had aged 10 years. His face was gray and drawn, and he didn't smile at us at all. I mean, he acknowledged, he looked at us.
I think he knew he was finally going to meet. I thought Satan. His father, Satan.
He looked more finished. Just finished. And he showed warmth and concern and compassion for the guards. Those guys looked pretty shook up to me. You could see it in their faces. They showed the etchings of strain in their faces much more than did Mr. Harris. And he sat down and was put into place, and that's when he said, I'm sorry. You know, after his arms were in place and the straps were affixed to him, he leaned his head right over towards Steve Baker and very clearly mouthed the words, I'm sorry.
And then Steve kind of just nodded his head. Like, too late, one of those nods, and...
Harris had 14 years to apologize to me, and he never did. He never tried to contact me or the family in any way, shape, or form. And he had plenty of ways of doing that. I mean, I'm not difficult to locate. I'm a member of the San Diego Police Department.